Hello, 7th grade artists. So this video is just going to show you some of the early painting stages of your Impressionist and or Post-Impressionist reproductions. There is already a video which shows you how to get this painting started, which is Van Gogh's bedroom from his asylum in Arles. And then this video I'm going to start with showing you Berthe Morisot's peony painting and how you would start that one. And then I will also do another video of the San Giorgio painting by Monet with the sunrise in the water. That way you have a couple different things that you can be watching as you are getting started. Now remember, one of the most important things, no matter what it is that you are doing your reproduction painting of, is to have your image in front of you. So here I've got Berthe Morisot's Peonies in front of me. Go back down to my page here. I've got a cup of water, I've got my paints and everything ready. And everything is obviously drawn with as much detail as I can, but still nice and clean and neat. So the first thing I'm going to do, as you always will in any painting, is just start in the back. So I'm going to start in the back and I'm going to work my way towards the front. So I'm going to be starting with the background spaces that are all the way around all of the flowers in the painting. So because that is a rather large area, what I'm going to do is dip my brush in my cup of water, and I'm going to actually start by painting that background space just with water. So it's going to look quite boring for a little bit because you cannot see the water going on the page. However, if you are the one who is doing the painting, you can sort of see it a bit if you turn your head to the right angle. Now what I'm doing here is called the wet on wet technique. And it's really good for a large space like the background of the peony painting, because what it will do is allow me to use a little bit less paint, and it will allow all of the color to spread much more quickly and evenly, because since we're using watercolor paint, wherever you have water, the paint will go. So you do want to paint kind of quickly with the water, and I also go back into areas where I've already painted and just add a little more water as I'm going, because we do want to make sure that that entire background stays good and wet for this first step. So again, I'm just going to get water all over my entire background from the table up, because it's all some type of brown there. So anytime you have a painting, there are a couple of you who have paintings where the background is mostly one color. So what you're going to want to do is the same kind of concept in that background space so that you get lots of water and you can move the color around evenly within that water. It's okay if you go over your edges. You'll see as we get going here with the paint that I've definitely gone over some of my edges a little bit of the petals and the flowers and the stems and things like that. But that's perfectly okay because I can still see my pencil lines through what's going to be my first little bit of paint. Because we are going to paint these in layers, I'm not going to start with anything too dark. So now I've got my whole background wet with water, and I'm just going to get some brown. There are some other colors mixed in here, but the first thing I'm going to do is just put some brown throughout that whole background. And you can see that wherever I have the water, the brown is moving and it's going to stay nice and smooth. Again, I'm not going to worry too much about the edges. You can definitely go ahead and mix in some of the other colors that we see, like there's some blue and then some grayish colors in here. We could definitely go ahead and mix some of those in, some white even. One of the things to remember though, when you are painting with watercolors, is that anywhere where you have true white in your painting, you just want to leave the paper showing. Because with watercolor, you cannot ever get back to white if you cover any of that area with the color. So right now, I'm just going to continue moving this around. Maybe put in a little bit of that grayish blue color here. Still just moving everything around. Right now it's looking a little bit dark in this section, and I don't need it quite that dark, especially not yet. So what I can actually do is just tilt my page a little bit so that the color moves around in the water. So you'll see as I move the page, you can see that the color is only going to where I have water. So that's another benefit of the wet on wet technique. I can really control where the water goes and how dark or light my first layer is. So this does make a little bit of a mess. You'll see that it is on the table. But since it's watercolor, it will be quite easy to wipe up. So we're not too concerned about that. So that might be closer to the type of color that I want on that first layer, that particular part of it. So then I'm going to go ahead and work on the other side while everything is still a little bit wet. There's a little more blue on this side. So I'm going to start with putting some blue in, and then I'm going to be adding some brown, adding some more water as I'm going here. Because remember, the best way to make watercolor lighter is to add more water, not necessarily to add white. So now I'm starting to get back into more of a brown section up here. So remember, one of the most important things, which I've already talked about a little bit, is that we are going to be building up our color and our values in layers. Do not expect or try to get everything on there within that first layer. It's not an effective way of working with watercolors or any type of paint for that matter. So now as things are starting to dry a little bit more, I'm just going to go in and add some other colors that I'm seeing there in my background. Still keeping it all pretty wet and letting it just kind of dry as I go. Once again, it's okay if you cover up some of your leaves and flowers and petals. We can always work back into those spaces. And I can always lighten up my paint. I'll show you how to do that. There's actually a little bit of red up here at the top, so I'm just going to put a smidge of red in there. Rinse my brush a little bit, get some more of that bluish, grayish color, and put it down here where it appears. Then I'm going to do my tilting thing again to kind of lighten up some of those areas and spread the pigment more. So once again, you will see that it might run over the petals, might run over the leaves, and that's okay. But it does primarily stay where I have water. So another very good way of lightening things up a little bit is with a paper towel. You can actually literally just press it down to lighten an area. Like if I need to make this all lighter right now, I can just press and it lightens that whole area up. And then I can go back in with my paintbrush and just smooth the color back out so that I don't have that texture. Some of your paintings you'll want that texture because the artist had the texture similar. Others of your paintings you'll want to smooth it back out with a little bit of water. The other thing that you can do with a paper towel is just put sort of the corner of it in a puddle of water, and you'll see that it just kind of soaks up the excess water there so that you are left with just the pigment and the color. So I've got that pretty even on that side. I'm just going to kind of mop up a little extra paint here. Same thing down here. Just little bits. And then I'm going to just kind of press it into the corner or the edge of this table. Just kind of wipe that off a little bit. And then do the same thing with my vase here. So you'll see the watercolor paint can be very forgiving. You can definitely clean it up pretty easily. You can use it pretty easily. One of the key components to working with watercolor paints is going to be to work in layers. So this might be the first layer on that part of this painting. So the background right now would basically have its first layer, and I would want to let that dry a little bit before I go back into anything that is touching the background. So at this point I could work on the table and the area down here, but I would not want to touch the flowers or the vase or even get too close to this edge. Now this table is pretty dark and it's kind of a brownish black, so I'm going to get my black wet, and I'm also going to keep my brown wet from earlier, and then I'm just going to go ahead and start in. This time I'm not doing the wet on wet technique, but I'm not going to go right up against the background right now either. I'm going to go almost right to it, but not quite. And you can see that the paint is going to be a little bit thicker now because we're not doing the wet on wet. I still want to make sure it's not too dark from the beginning. So now I'm just going to use a little more water. And I'm going to carefully go around the vase. Again, there's some of that bluish color down here. And then it gets a lot lighter on this side of the table. So I'm going to put just water on my brush and no paint, and just kind of spread that color around a little bit more so that it gets lighter in that section. I'm going to let it stay lighter as I go across here as well, because I have to be able to add some blue to this section. So you can see wherever the water is going, that paint is going to continue to smooth out. Then this back corner of the table is kind of darker again. Still being careful of that vase. And then it comes back in with some brown here. This edge is pretty dark. So I'm going to put a little more black. Going basically all the way down on that spot. Then I'm going to go back in with some more brown. I'm going to bring that around to the other section of brown here. And then once again, I'm going to put just some water on my brush and smooth this out so that it stays soft and gradual there as I get to that lighter value. Put a little blue here where it looks like there is some blue. Same thing on this side. So since the paper is still wet and the paint is still wet, those colors are going to be mixing together a bit. And at this point, I'm going to just put a little more of my darker color up here. Now that that bit is drier, it'll fade a little bit less and blend a little bit less with the background. So then that might be my first layer on the table and on the background. And as you can see, the paper is a bit wrinkly because there's a lot of water on it. So at this point, we would not want to do anything else on this particular painting until it dries some more. So you would want to make sure that you have something else that you can be working on in case you do need to do that. And there will also be a quiz, so you can always review for that. And I'll have other activities for you guys to do while you are waiting for your paintings to dry.